Realistic polymer clay eyes. Look at these creepy guys. They are awesome. You need to give this thing a shot. You are going to need a few materials to build these boys. 10mm cabochons, 1-inch clear plastic fillable ornaments if you want a mold to try to cast them in. I use Sculpey original clay, but really any polymer clay is going to work for you. Standard craft paint, I used white to base the eyeball out, and then yellow ochre as a wash to give it that diseased kind of yellowy color. I use Prang watercolors. These are also optional, but you can use any kind of watercolor in the background to add detail, speckling. I used a little bit of green, a little bit of red, a little bit of blue. Oil wash, if you're not familiar, you just put some oil paint into paint thinner. I use burnt sienna again for brown color. You can use black, green, any kind of color you want. Really settles into the cracks, gives you a nice effect. Red or burgundy yarn for the veining. Liquitex high gloss varnish, which I use to glue the veins down. You could really use anything else, including the last item, which is clear fingernail polish. I built this holder out of some plywood and a couple screws simply to hold two eyes in place. All I did was countersink back in. You wouldn't even have to do that. You could scale this up, do 6 eyes at a time if you wanted to. This is just to hold them while you're working on them and to hold them while you're placing them in the oven to actually bake. Here's a quick screen grab of the ornaments that I use for my 1-inch rounds. You could just roll these out by hand. I'm a little bit too detail oriented for that, so I wanted something that was approximately the right size so I could get approximately the right size eyeballs. I also built out a cabochon holder that I could use for a press to press in the approximate size into the rounded over Sculpey before it was baked. My first attempt at the eye, which is included most of these pictures, was actually done with a ball stylus, and I think I kind of like that a little bit better. Gave a slightly larger hole, but this definitely works. Just glue a cabochon onto a pencil or a dowel rod or anything else you got lying around so you can push it in and pull it back out. If you don't do that, you're going to run into a problem where you're going to mar up your eyeball by trying to dig the cabochon back out. Here's a picture of me cramming the Sculpey clay after I worked with it, made it a little bit malleable into the ornament, giving me that nice 1-inch round. You'll notice all that Sculpey hanging off the back gives me leverage to pull it back out. If your Sculpey gets too warm or you leave it in too long or you pack it in there too tight, you're going to rip it pulling it back out. So be cautious with this. Just kind of push it in, pull it out, push it in, pull it out. Yeah. Here's the pre-baked eye with cabochon included. I'm getting ready to remove the cabochon, which again gave me some problems, so I created that pencil tool with cabochon on the end, and I'm getting ready to screw it onto the holder for baking. Here's my first eye after baking. I just set it on some aluminum foil. When I bake out polymer clay, I do it at 250 for slightly longer. Most of the instructions tell you 275 for 15 minutes per 1/4 inch, I believe. Like I said, I run it a little bit lower to hopefully prevent cracking. Keep an eye on it because, again, they do start to crack if you bake them too long and they dry out too much. Some other hints with polymer clay. In addition to baking at a slightly lower temperature, you can use 91% isopropyl alcohol to smooth before baking. That way it'll take out any of your fingerprints, level out any kind of gashes or anything else that you may have from rolling out your clay. You can paint them with watercolors. Use alcohol to activate that, and it'll do the same thing as the smoothing. It will actually bite into the Sculpey clay and allow you to really make that color part of your eye. That works for anything else you're doing in Sculpey. Sculpey Original is fine for these eyes, but any generic polymer clay will work. The more expensive polymer clays will work. You're going to get a better finish if you jump up a little bit. Also consider some of those special effects Sculpeys. They have glow in the dark, which would be really cool for this kind of setup. Here you can see I'm getting ready to vein out my eyeball. I've got a small piece of red yarn in the background. Here's my first roll at it with a little bit of that varnish to hold it together. You notice it's sticking off. Several coats will bring that up. Here you see I've done some wash. I'm starting to get that diseased colored look. I really like the way this one's turning out. And then on to the printouts of the iris. I've got some resources at the end that gives you some locations to get a couple of these, download them. I just printed off a few examples and went through and attached them again with the varnish. Another thing that I did, I went ahead and dabbed just a small amount of black fingernail polish onto the pupil. The reason I did this, I like that extra depth within the pupil. It makes it more realistic, really kind of sells the look of the eyeball. Here's a picture for scale showing you the look of the iris and the eyeball next to each other. And then my next slide shows you the cabochon glued on. Need to work a little bit on the way I do that fingernail polish because it looks like the pupil is blown out. There's really no problem with that. Blown out pupils, it looks good for your horror eyeballs. Because I used a ball stylus for my first eye, the hole was a little bit larger than the cabochon, so to adjust for that, I used black fingernail polish to fill in the background. I actually like this look quite a bit in the finished eye, so again, I think this is something I'm going to continue to do in order to give the eye that little bit of extra highlight around the edges. And here's the iris and pupil set within the eye, ready for the final coating, which is going to be clear fingernail polish. I went with that as opposed to continuing to use the high gloss varnish, mostly because it's thicker and it gives you faster results. And here's another look at it after a few coats of fingernail polish. And here's our final, placed within a skull. And a few quick researches for you. If you need to find some good pictures of iris, you can see this irisphoto.com. They have a gallery where you can capture pictures of different human iris. You can also Google search items. Take a look for high resolution options and you should be fine printing them out. I would look at animal iris as well. I think that could be a cool effect if you wanted a cat eye. Lots of reptiles have some cool irises as well, which will make some amazing eyes. Cabochon are easily sourced via Amazon. Again, Sculpey clay you can pick up almost anywhere. Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Michaels, Amazon. Generic clays are also available. They're a little bit cheaper. Look for those glow-in-the-dark effects, and if you're looking for human eyes, you want approximately 24 millimeters for the full eye, 10 millimeters for your cornea iris, and between 2 and 8 millimeters, depending on how dilated you want the eyes. Thanks for taking a look, and hopefully you have a good time creating your own cheap polymer clay eyes.